I'm Riley,
And I'm Roni,
and this is the Plan to Eat podcast.
where we have conversations about meal planning, food, and wellness to help you answer the question, what's for dinner? Hello, and welcome to the Plan to Eat podcast. After a series of interviews, it is me and Riley today, and we are talking about New Year's because it's already the middle of December somehow.
I know it's coming, and I still feel surprised by you saying that. Like, how did we get here so fast?
It's so true. Yeah, it always feels like the holidays sneak up. It's like, you're in August and whatever, the holidays are a long time away. And then all of a sudden it's the end of October and you're getting ready for all of your Thanksgiving plans. And then after that, you're getting ready for, Christmas, New Year's, Hanukkah, whatever the thing you celebrate is. And once the beginning of November comes, it is literally a snowball.
Yeah, no joke. Because if you're a decorator, you go Halloween decorations, Thanksgiving decorations, maybe you're hosting Thanksgiving decorations. And then it's whatever holiday you're celebrating in December. And then it's New Year's. It's like if you're you're going to so many parties, you're getting your kids in costumes, like you're decorating your house, you're redecorating your house potentially 3 to 4 times. It's just a lot of added things on your plate. So
Yeah,
it
totally
does
is.
sneak up.
Yeah. Well, we in particular want to talk today about getting prepared for New Year's, maybe planning ahead for what your resolutions are going to be. Um, and, just kind of getting ready for that beginning part of the year because, like we're saying, it sneaks up on you. And I've definitely made the mistake of New Year's Eve being like, oh, what am I going to do in the new year? And, if you're somebody who's goal oriented, that's probably not the right time to be starting to create your goals.
But maybe for the goal-oriented people, they already are starting, and
Yeah,
maybe we're
maybe
just
so.
trying to motivate and help other people. I don't know. But I am a planner and I'm feeling okay, it's what we're recording this on December the 12th. So we've got a little bit of time. So we have put some thought into it. That's the planners in us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to preface this conversation, we're going to use the word resolutions a lot because I think that it's just a commonly used word in the new year. I personally don't like the word resolution. I think that resolutions kind of have a negative connotation on them. Like everybody has a resolution, but resolution has this idea of it's something I'm going to say I'm going to do, but never actually follow through on it. So even though we're using resolutions, you can think of it as, creating new habits or setting new goals, whatever it is that you do in the new year. Personally, I'm like a habit and goal oriented person. And there's just something special about the new year, even if you're not somebody who is really interested in resolutions. There's something that's unique about the freshness of a new year and like the changing of a calendar that just makes it an easier time to kind of like start something new.
Getting a new planner.
Getting a new planner. Man, I already have mine and I'm so excited.
It feels so good. It really is that fresh start. I think that one of the things that has stood out to me in thinking through this is committing to yourself is as important as committing to anything else you do in your life. So
Mhm.
if you have this goal or new habit you want to reach, or let's call it a resolution, um, you do kind of have to plan for it, or you will fail. I
Yeah.
personally believe that if you don't plan for something like that, if you don't set yourself up for success through habit changes, through simple things like Google Calendar, put it on there. I'm gonna do this today because this is part of how I'm gonna reach my goal, whether maybe that's budgeting. Maybe every Thursday at 4 PM, you're checking your budget, you're doing your budgeting, whatever that looks like. Um, but schedule it for yourself, just like you'd schedule anything else, just to get you started, regardless of what your goals are. How can you make it more attainable?
Yeah. Or actionable is the word that was like
Yeah.
coming to mind when you said that is what are the actual steps that you can take? So if your goal is to save money, what are ways that you can save money? Can you set, like an auto pay to your savings account for every paycheck that you get? Can you find places like the grocery store to cut back on the things that you're spending? Um, I think if you go through that process of creating action items that support your goal or support your resolution, though that's the actual way that, you really make change rather than just saying, I'm going to be better at saving money this year. Well, that really doesn't mean anything. And that's how resolutions don't get past, January 3rd.
Yeah, so this brings me to a perfect segue into one of my points, which was find a tool or product that you need to help make this happen. That also could be find a podcast that is
Mm.
helping you support your goals, like YouTubers, podcasts, Instagram accounts. I just stumbled across an Instagram account the other day that's all about cleaning hacks and like just cleaning tips
Yeah.
that are very actionable, but very simple to just help you get to maybe your goal is to have a cleaner house or a cleaner car or whatever it is. If your goal is around cleaning, find somebody who's encouraging you in that way and who's a really good at it. And then is giving you those little tips and don't just try to cold turkey, like do these things that you're probably maybe not already good at.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of our goals and resolutions, sometimes they come about because things have piled on in the year and we're just overwhelmed. But sometimes it's just that we're trying to do something outside of our norm.
Yeah.
And so this is one of my tips is find a podcast or a YouTube that is like maybe it's meal planning. Listen to the Plan to Eat podcast. Maybe it's can't think of that cleaning one right now. Sorry, but maybe it's cleaning. Maybe it's budgeting, and you need to go listen to the YNAB podcast. Regardless of your goal, I know that there is somebody out there talking about it and those kinds of things, especially listening and like maybe watching on a YouTube video will really give you the motivation and really great information and tips and the encouragement, even though you're not connected with them personally, that encouragement to kind of keep going with it.
Right, yeah, I love that tip. I had the same tip of, finding the tools that will help you reach your goals, but I really like the idea of listening to a podcast or finding a YouTube channel because it almost makes you feel like you have a little bit of support or community in the goal that you're trying to accomplish or, the end goal that you wanna reach. And, one of my tips was, like, write a list of 10 things that will help you reach your goal. Whether they're actually 10 things that are you could all implement right now, I think if you just have a list of, these are 10 actions that I could take, either throughout the year or I could take one action a month or something like that. I think that if you start with just ideas of here are the things that I can implement in order to make this happen, that's a really, a good like positive direction to go in. If you're starting out and you're like, I want to save money or, I want to eat healthier or whatever your goal is, you could be sitting here being like, I actually have no idea how to get started with this. And so just having a brainstorming session and potentially you listen to some of these podcasts or watch some YouTube videos and they give you ideas, but just having a brainstorming session, I think that you actually could come up with more ideas than you realize if you just sit down and focus your attention on the thing that you want to do.
Yes, and I think just to piggyback off of that, you don't have to think that those things are only coming from within yourself, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
while I do feel like I can get a good brain dump going, talking to my friends or getting advice from somebody like a podcaster, even Googling it.
Yeah.
How do I reach my goal of reading more books? You know, because there are endless resources out there they're designed to help you. So I love that of just taking the time to think through what could be helpful. I just listened to Mackenzie Kappa. She was talking about New Year's resolutions. It was an accident that I listened to that one before we recorded ours, but she was talking about these bite-sized things that you can do to help you reach your goals, based on like the 12 months of the year. So her example was if you want to read 24 books, well, that's books a month. Okay, so can you read two books at the same time every month? Two different kinds of books at the same time? Do you listen to one and you read the other? Do you read one for 2 weeks and one for another 2 weeks? Like, that's just the same idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because most goals can be broken down into bite-sized pieces, and I think that that's probably why people fail
Yeah.
often is because they're just like, "I'm gonna save an extra $1,000 a month." But, like, where's that money coming from?
Right.
Right now, you're probably spending that instead of saving it, or maybe you're not saving quite that much, whatever it is. $1,000 is a random number, but unless you break it down into, "Okay, I'm gonna save this much money every day or every week, or I'm gonna spend less here so I can save more there." Unless you do that work, you really aren't gonna be able to reach that kind of goal.
I mean, I think in general, that's the hard part about setting goals or, change is this idea of like changing your habits. You have to there is upfront work in actually creating these changes, and it's not easy. Like, we're not here saying, "Oh, this is super easy peasy."
No.
It does take upfront work to just even get to the point of implementing some of these things because you really have to find the right methods that work for you. I remember when we talked to Rosemarie, the busy budgeter, and, her system works specifically for people who have a really hard time with being organized or have a really hard time with planning their meals and getting their budget under control. She called them like hot mess, quote unquote, hot mess people. And, but like she's found a system that worked really well for her in the stage of life that she was in. And so I think that part of this goal setting situation is finding those things that work best for you. And like it might require listening to multiple podcasts, watching multiple YouTube videos, doing multiple Google searches and reading blog posts about it because you know what you've tried before that didn't work. And so, it's never going to be reinventing the wheel because I'm sure somebody else has already found a solution that will work for you. But it's just like, getting to the point of finding that and thinking, okay, this seems like I'm able to implement this into my life. Um, because yeah, it's not reasonable to say, yeah, I'm going to save $1,000 this month. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to stop driving my car.
Right. Right. Yeah, something I just thought of based on all the things you were saying is everybody's personality is so different.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time our resolutions are built around, okay, go with me here, like really hard things or like opposing to our personality kinds of things. Um, or, it's like you're trying to force something to make a new habit. And we do try to like we try to swallow a whale by by doing these things. But resolutions can be fun too. It
Mm-hmm.
could be that you love to read, but your life has just led you in this path of not reading a whole lot. And so reading a book a month is a great place to start. But the idea that just occurred to me in that train of thought is that you could do a new resolution every quarter to keep it
Mm-hmm.
interesting for yourself. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be, I mean, it's you can get tired of them. You fall off the wagon. But like a 3-month chunk of time is a really quality amount of time to put into one goal. And you could
Yeah.
have 4 goals overall. And which one, when does it fit? Maybe the summertime is when you want to read a ton of books because maybe you're a teacher and you're off work in the summer and it just fits. So maybe set a goal for each quarter of the year and then you just have 3 months. It's way more bite-sized at that point. And then you're not thinking, "Well, next December, when I have to," like, that's a long time from right now.
Yeah.
While it will go by faster than we all want it to. I just think it's interesting to even kinda break it down even more and have more goals spread out over time.
Right. I remember last year I read an article from a person who did a new goal every month.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with everybody. I tried to implement that into my life in 2022 and I actually kind of forgot about it. Sometimes that can be a hard part about
Yeah.
goal setting, or resolutions is like you just kind of forget, like, oh, yeah, I was supposed to be focusing on this thing. So, maybe that's a time where you have reminders in your planner or on your Google Calendar to tell you to
Yes.
refocus. But I thought that that was a really good idea too, because, they did things like they cut sugar out for a month or they cut alcohol out for a month. But it wasn't just, his idea was it wasn't just cutting things out of your life. Like some of your months should be adding things. So like your idea of like reading more books, like there should be times when you're adding more fun into your life, or adding more exercise into your life. I think that it's easy to get into the mindset of like a resolution or a goal is taking something away that we think is like a negative habit that we have. But there's also the aspect of if you take something away, you could replace it with something positive. And then, it kind of gives you a little bit of like positive feedback by being like, well, I'm no longer doing this other thing, but that's because I'm no longer watching an hour of TV every night, but now I'm reading more. And that really is the thing that makes me, much happier at the end of my day every day.
Yeah. And in a month is so much more doable than 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it because if you're halfway through and you're like, "Wow, this really stinks,"
Yeah. Oh, well, I only have
and
2 weeks
you
left.
only have 2 weeks left, you don't have, 11 and a half months left.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of scheduling it. When you said that, I was thinking about how I always ignore reminders on my phone.
Oh, man, me too.
Notorious. I'll get a reminder and I ignore it. So adding it to my planner or to my Google Calendar is a much for me, that would work much better for me. The first of every month, it's an alert that says, "Hey, today you're going to this month you're focusing on more time with friends.
Mhm.
What are you going to do about it?" I'm going to pay much more attention to that. So this is that idea again of leaning into who you are, what works for you, and knowing what doesn't work for you. We jumped kind of into the middle of some of my list of things, but one of the things that I had first was what goes well for you normally?
Yeah,
What went well for you last year? And then kind of taking that idea and like self-reflecting
right.
to think, okay, I really enjoyed that aspect of last year. Well, how can I do more of that this year? Or I ignore reminders on my phone literally every day. So stop using them. Use a different method. Why are you fighting this thing that's not working for you? And that does kind of play into tools or products that you need to like make your goals happen. But um yeah, just like pondering it, self-reflecting, those are really important parts of starting a new year and your goals.
Totally, and I have that on my list too, is, how can you reflect on the past year to help you set goals in the new year? And I think, I'm a journaler, and so I think that if you're somebody who, um, either likes to journal or maybe you even don't like to journal, but it's just to me, it's a really great way to actually process your thoughts, because often I'll sit down, so say I'm doing, like, a reflection and on the year and trying to figure out, what should I focus on in the upcoming year? I might start and sit down and be like, okay, I literally don't remember what happened this year, and you're like racking your brain to go through month after month. But like all of a sudden, my hand will just be flying across the page because all of a sudden, like something will get triggered. And I'll be like, oh yeah, this was like super fun, or even like this was a negative thing. And I don't want that, I don't want to redo that again next year. So I think that reflection is super important. I personally don't know very many other tools aside from, doing something like journaling. I don't know if you have any, Riley, but that's mine. That's my go-to.
Well, journaling is a really good one. And I find it valuable too. I'm not as naturally inclined to journal, but when I do it, I find a lot of value in it.
Mhm.
A couple of ideas came to mind. One of them is they have journals that are like one line a day, like a
Oh, yeah.
5-year, one line a day. And so December 12th, 2022, I could go to that day and I could see what I did the last 3 years or 1 year, depending on when I got it. And those kinds of things can help jog your memory for like, what did I do? What was bad? Like, when were there bad days? When were there good days? To help you maybe help guide you maybe in the like, what do you want to do next year? And it's one sentence for people who are maybe less inclined to journal. A one sentence like, here's what I did today. Here's like I had a great conversation with my grandma today. Okay, my resolution is to call my grandma more. I love
Yeah.
talking to her. Whatever. But the other one that came to mind is accountability friends
Yeah.
for your goal. But the other thing I was thinking with that is if you have a close friend, go to coffee with them. Be like, hey, I'm having trouble remembering what happened last year. When we talked on the phone or when we got together, like what was I excited about? What was like what do you remember me talking to you about? Was I super negative this year? Okay, my goal is to be positive next year.
Yeah.
Um or, maybe I something I did brought me a ton of joy and I told you about it and now you don't forget that I told you that. Cuz sometimes friends are really good at that, of the looking into your life and thinking, "Wow, you loved that. You did
Yeah.
really well when you were involved in that," or whatever. But friends can just see your life a little differently than you can. And it's a bit like journaling, because if you're talking to a friend regularly, it's a bit like journaling. If you're filling them in on your life, you're hearing about theirs. And so maybe you could do that for each other. Just sit down and have a like New Year's coffee date, and figure out, and from that conversation, glean what you could do in the new year or where the positives were that you could lean into more.
I really like that idea. And it actually makes me think I am a very forgetful person in a lot of ways, which is why I write everything down. But I have a couple friends who are their minds are steel traps. And, we could be talking about March or something. You'd be like, "Oh, yeah, we went to X, Y, and Z, and we did such and such. And I'd be like, wow, I literally don't remember that at all. So yeah, sometimes friends are really good resources because maybe they have a better memory than you.
No, I'm like you. I sometimes this is again where I use Google Calendar. I'll go back and see like what were we doing?
Yeah. That's also a good idea.
I'll delete things from the calendar if they didn't happen. It looks like we could have just left it. Who cares? I'm like, yeah, but in a year, when I look back to try to figure out what we were doing at this time last year, I remembered that we didn't. I won't. We'll look at that and think we did it because we did it. Like that. Um, that was a really weird sentence. We didn't do it, so I deleted it. Whatever.
I actually was recently reading this book that's called Storyworthy, and it's by a guy, I can't think of what his name is right now, but he's, do you know the podcast The Moth? Have you heard of that before? Okay,
No,
so
I haven't.
it's a podcast. It started as like a live event, and now the podcast is like recorded live events. And so the Moth is they call it a story slam, and it's like where people come to, like a coffee shop that has like an open mic situation, and, like you put your name into a hat to potentially go up on stage and tell a story in front of the crowd of people.
Whoa.
And so the guy who wrote the book is like he's like one of the, top winning Moth Grand Slam storytellers. So he's got the book is all about, storytelling method essentially. But one of his recommendations is to do what he calls homework for life, which is he does it just in like an Excel or like a Google spreadsheet. You could probably do it in a planner or a journal instead. But he essentially at the end of every day, he thinks back on what happened today and what was one thing that could potentially make a story. And because his idea is that, like, every day is a story-worthy day. Even if you felt like it was a super boring day or, nothing out of the ordinary happened, more than likely something happened. And so he says, like, "Don't write a whole lot about it, just write 2 to 3 sentences at the most." And then, like, if you do that every single day of your life, he said that for him, it actually made time really slow down because he was actually able to go back and look at every single day of his life for I think he's been doing it for like 8 years or something. Like, go back and look at every single day of the last year and think, "Oh, yeah, that's what happened that day," or, "Oh, yeah, I went and saw that friend," or so that's a really cool idea. It definitely takes some work. If you're interested in learning more, you should definitely read Storyworthy. But, I did try it for a little while and I kinda got out of the habit of it. I put a reminder in my phone every night for 9 p.m. to do my homework and just started ignoring the notification.
Okay, so
So I
clearly
only did it
reminders don't work for you
Yeah,
either.
so I only did it for about a week. But I do really like that idea. It's hard I feel like it's really hard at first, and he says that it's hard at first because you feel like your life isn't interesting enough to tell stories about. But then he said that he started having these revelations of, like he wouldn't have remembered, like, these little things that, like, his wife said to him or, like, his kid did that all of a sudden ended up turning into these stories that he would tell on stage. So, I guess that's just another idea to throw into the pot.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the thing that came to mind when you were talking about it was just being more invested in your life.
Yeah.
I don't know, just writing down because you were saying this, I'm literally thinking through my day today and thinking, what would have been worth a story?
Right. It does yeah, it's an interesting introspective on your life for sure.
Yeah. But I think that stories certainly get better over time,
Yeah.
and probably that's because things get embellished or things get deleted or, and so stories evolve and they get more exciting, maybe even less exciting as time goes on. I'm just thinking about stories my husband and I will often tell, like party kind of stories, like the funny stories are like, oh, we just in conversation and you tell this story or whatever. How interesting, like how much more I remember them.
Yeah.
The more I tell them and the more that I like, they get funnier over time. And I don't know, it really feels like you're making a choice to invest in your own life as being a story worth being told. So I really like that.
That's a good perspective,
Yeah.
yeah. Should we talk a little bit about meal planning as a New Year's resolution? Or do you have other tips to share?
I have some more generic tips, but we can certainly jump into meal planning.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about meal planning a little bit more in the new year as well. So, but we wanted to just give an overview of why you might choose meal planning as your New Year's resolution or goal, because we think it's a pretty fabulous choice.
Let's be real. You can't be listening to the Plan to Eat podcast without us talking about meal planning at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Eh,
you were expecting that when you
hopefully you
launched.
were looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Meal planning is really interesting because it's kind of like an umbrella, like goal or resolution, right? Like it's one thing that actually contains a lot of little goals and resolutions underneath it. So your goal could be to meal plan more, which could result in you doing lots of other things, or your goal could be to do something else, and meal planning could kind of be part of that. It could be one of your action steps. So like if your goal was to save money, meal planning could be one of those action steps for a way to save money. But also, if you have meal planning as your goal, you're probably going to save money. You're probably going to save time, probably going to spend more time with your family. Potentially, you're going to eat healthier foods and you're going to end up being more organized and productive week to week. So, meal planning really covers a lot of different things. But also, like I said, it could work in the reverse where, like your goal could be to be more organized. And meal planning is one of those actionable steps to take you there.
absolutely. I think that statement has become more apparent to me in the last year because of doing this podcast,
Right.
than in the entire 7 years that I worked for Plan to Eat prior to that. Because you realize how these pieces start to fit together.
Right.
I want to elaborate on all the things you said, just so people who maybe are new to meal planning can start to understand, like, why these things are connected at all.
Yep.
Um, One of the things I was thinking is that planning your meals can help you have less stress overall in your life, which could be your goal in and of itself.
Hmm.
So maybe you're starting to implement tools that can help you be less stressed, but it can also help you be less stressed so you can focus on other goals
Right.
because it allows you to have more time. I think one of the things that you mentioned was time with your family, time to do whatever you want, you know? So why is that? That is because when you plan your meals, you don't have to think. You don't use the brain space to think about what's for dinner. You did that when you planned your dinners or your breakfasts or your lunches or whatever your planning cycle looks like. You have a consolidated list. So when you go to the grocery store, you're buying what you need and you're in and out. You're not wandering the aisles unless you're at a new grocery store. You're not wandering the aisles trying to find what you need. You have a list. You're not making it up as you go along, which means you're going to leave something at the store and then you're going to have to go back because the key ingredient for the lemon chicken was the lemons and you didn't get the lemons. um, what else? How else can it save you time? When you go to have dinner that night, you just open up the recipe and you start cooking it. Maybe with a crock pot meal and you started it at 8 a.m. and all you do is just get some bowls out and you eat it for dinner. So there's lots of ways it can help reduce time and stress. So let's unpack another one, Ronnie. Which one do you want to unpack?
Well, we've already talked about saving money a couple of times in here, but I do think that that's a really important one. I think right now, like food costs are still increasing. And, I know my grocery bill has increased without me even trying. And so, saving money is really important. And I think probably aside from like my mortgage, I spend the most money at the grocery store out of every paycheck. When we did a survey of our customers a few years ago, they said that just by creating meal plan, nothing special about their meal plan. It was just the fact that they created a meal plan saved them an average of 23% on their grocery bill. So that's a pretty big savings. And it literally, I mean, it's for the exact same reason that you kind of were just stating is that you go to the grocery store, you have this consolidated list, and you're buying things that have a purpose. So you're buying items that actually go with recipes instead of wandering around aisles and being like, what do we need for enchiladas? Maybe this and or maybe that. Oh, also those Oreos look really good, so I'm gonna buy some of those.
But maybe you already had diced tomatoes at home.
Right.
Or maybe
Yeah.
you already had the chili powder, which is the bane of my existence is chili powder. I end up with a bunch of those. So yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's like you didn't actually need to buy it. You could have saved
Right.
$5 on buying that spice or not, because you knew you had it or you didn't know you had it because you were winging it in the store.
Totally. Yeah. The winging it in the store situation can lead to a lot of problems.
Absolutely. We are not anti takeout.
Not
I
at all.
am a huge fan. But I think that that's part of planning too and budgeting for sure. You can't eat out, take out every night unless you've budgeted for it. I mean, maybe you can. Maybe you're in that position that you can. I don't want to just make a huge assumption, but I personally cannot eat takeout every night without having planned for that because then
Right.
my food budget for the month is totally blown. And so planning even for that. and saying, okay, Thursday night, we're going to go out and have dinner somewhere because we're already going to be in town for this, this, and this. But the other 3 to 4 nights that I'm planning that week, I planned for and I bought the ingredients that I needed. One thing about Plant Eat is that the shopping list shows you exactly how much you need to buy of anything. And
Right.
so you're not buying more than you need, which means you're wasting less, but you're also saving money at the grocery store.
Yeah, because instead of going to the grocery store and being like, "How many lemons did I need for that lemon chicken?" I guess I'll just buy like 6 to cover my bases, and you really only needed 2. And not that lemons are that expensive, but over the course of your entire shopping trip, things like that and buying the wrong quantities of items really adds up.
Yeah. It really does. And because we use little piddly examples like lemons all the time. Yeah. Over the course of a whole month of groceries, that could be $20, $50,
Yeah,
depending on all the things that you did that with. And then if you are wasting that food because you're not actually cooking it, then that's wasting money too. And you take your grocery budget and you just put it in the trash can.
totally.
um, yeah. So yeah, saving money at the grocery store and meal planning, they go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Yeah, so then if we're thinking about being more organized or more productive, this goes along the lines a little bit too of feeling more stressed. When you actually make a plan and you are planning ahead for the things that happen in your life, not just with meal planning, but with an app with a planner or a calendar, it just leads to a lot less mental fatigue and a lot less decision fatigue. And that correlates with being more organized. When you don't feel like you're constantly trying to remember everything and pick up all of the pieces every second of the day, you're able to just kind of, like relax a little bit more. Things in your life go a little bit smoother. And it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm frantic and, my house is a wreck because I can't remember all the things that I have to do. And I didn't have time to vacuum before I had to go to the grocery store or remember all these things. Life adds up real quick. And so planning ahead just makes that, so much more simple and just really relieves a lot of those mental to-dos and worries.
One thing that I've taken up doing recently is, I think I've done this. I do this periodically, but right now I'm in a really big phase of it. Whereas if something sounds good to eat, I plan it. If I've already planned this week, I plan it next week. If I've already
Yeah.
planned next week, I plan it the next week. And I'm actually like not even sitting down to plan because I'll just pick up my app and quickly schedule something or add it to my account immediately because I saw a recipe on Instagram or Facebook that looked good. And then I actually ended up planning like 3 weeks from now, but not even by thinking about it, more just
Yeah.
being inspired and thinking, "Oh, that sounded good." And that workload is just gone off my plate, which is huge. And I didn't have to sit down, but it's kinda just like adding that in of like, "Oh, I thought about it, so I'm just gonna do it really quick because it takes, 30 seconds or less, to do something like that." And that organization piece, like, I'm getting myself organized by barely even thinking about it.
Right, that's a great tip. I have actually found myself doing that more recently too. Like, we went out to eat the other day and, I didn't get a Reuben, but, like, I saw the Reuben on the menu and I was like, "Ooh, yeah, I'm gonna add that to my meal plan."
Yeah. I recently got an air fryer, and I know I'm late to the game, but that has been very inspiring to me too, because 'cause I'll look up air fryer recipes, and then I can't plan them all in 1 week, you know? So, I start spreading them out over the next couple of days, and it's really helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so a final thing that we love about meal planning is that it helps you spend more time with your people. Hopefully, your family or your friends, the people in your community who you care about. Maybe part of this seems like, okay, that's a long shot that meal planning is going to like actually help me spend more time with my family. But if your goal is to spend more time with your family, meal planning really does help you with that because food is a great connection point. And sitting around a meal is just a great time to be able to spend time with the people that you love, and having a plan for that meal makes sure that that meal happens a lot easier rather than doing this frantic thing at 5 o'clock, trying to find ingredients. And then, maybe you're frustrated and you don't actually want to spend time with your family anymore that night.
Yeah, that's the scenario I was picturing in my mind is just whoever's cooking, a mom or a dad, just, if there's other people living at your home, if you have children, and you go and it's like time to eat dinner and everyone's hungry. And then you're having to dole out snacks because you don't know and or you're behind schedule and you have to come up with something and then the thing's taking longer because you didn't plan for it well and whatever it is. And then by the time you're ready to eat dinner, everyone's just scarfing it down to be done because other things need to happen that in the evening, you know? Kids are on most of them are on schedules, or maybe you're on a schedule, maybe you got an after dinner meeting somewhere, like an extracurricular activity that you have. All of that is so stressful, which takes away from the enjoyment of being with your people. We've talked to several people on the podcast who are huge into eating with their families and having conversations over dinner. And I think it's something we've really lost. And if we can kind of get the cooking part and the what we're having part taken care of, which is what Plan T does, the rest of it can just be enjoyment
Yeah.
and just sitting together, having nice food and talking. And honestly, at that point, who cares about the food? You just get to spend time with people you love. But most of it have to eat. So
Yeah, and it also doesn't have to be something that happens every single night of your life, like, that's not the expectation that anybody has, but when you go through the process of planning ahead and you look at your schedule, you can decide, "Okay, well, Friday night looks like a great night to be able to have a family dinner together because we don't have other things going on." So we can, focus on making a nice meal, and then we can all sit around and eat it together. Whereas, maybe if you wouldn't have planned ahead, that night would come around and it would just be like, yeah, whatever. Let's just all go through the drive-through on our way home from school or
yeah.
something, you know?
Yeah. I mean, leftovers can also be a wonderful time together with your family. Um, Pizza.
Yeah.
Ordering pizza, like, maybe you plan for that, and then if that makes the spending time with your people better or more enjoyable, then do it.
I got nothing against pizza. We used to have Friday night pizza night when I was a kid, and it was the best, number 1. Okay, my mom would make homemade pizza dough, and then we all gotta make our own pizza, which keeps
So
everybody in the house
fun.
happy, right? And it
Yes,
was
it
so fun,
does.
and they're memories that I have because it was a fun time. Like, everybody was in the kitchen doing making their individual pizzas together, and then we were also able to sit around and eat the pizza together. So, overall, it was really fun. So, I love a Friday night pizza night.
Yeah. I think that these tips are just that we want the what you're eating and the cooking time and the stress that can come with meals, to be taken care of for you
Yeah.
so that you can eat together as a family or so you can do what you want to as a family or spend time maybe reaching other goals you have. But if that part is taken care of, it really helps.
Couldn't agree more.
One that we didn't talk about very much was eating healthier food.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I want to mention it really quick because that's a really big New Year's resolution for people.
absolutely.
If you're not planning what you're eating, chances are it's going to be hard to stick to the goals you have. Maybe you don't have the things you need at home because you didn't shop for them. Maybe you're hungry and the easier thing is what takes precedence. And so I know that that's another big statistic that we were impressed by when we surveyed our audience, is that just by meal planning, people were able to stick to their weight loss goals or stick to their health related food change goals. But it just makes sense because you're getting to make those choices in advance when you are in a good headspace, you know?
Right.
Here's what we're planning, here's what we're eating, because this is gonna help us achieve whatever our goals are. And then when you go to actually eat the dinner, you already bought it. You already can make you can make it. There's no winging it in that kind of situation. And then I think hand in hand with that and with budgeting is the wasting less.
Right.
If you're planning for the healthier meals and you're actually cooking them, you're not wasting them. It all goes together.
I mean, I think related to eating healthier food too, the new year is a really popular time for people to cut out certain foods, from their diet or, change their style of eating. And so the great part about Plan to Eat is that you can add a whole bunch of recipes that fit that style of eating. There was during one of my month-long uh, goals last year that I did in the beginning of the year, like my husband and I did paleo for a month. And if I wouldn't have meal planned for paleo recipes, it definitely wouldn't have happened because number 1, I don't always remember what are the things that are paleo compliant, but I didn't have to think about it because I already had the recipes on my meal plan. And so then I just was able to go to the grocery store, buy the things that were on my list, and I didn't really have to analyze, is this a thing that's okay? Is this thing that's not okay? I think a lot of people do like the Whole30 thing in the new year. And so if you're on one of those, specific style of eating changes, importing recipes that correspond with that style of eating, it's like so hugely helpful to be able to stick with it and takes a lot of the brain drain out of like, it's hard enough to change the way that you're eating, particularly if it's a drastic change. But then there's also the mental aspect of it, of this thing of like, I don't know what to cook, or I don't know what I'm supposed to be eating, or how does anybody eat a snack when they're not eating chips, I think that part is super helpful. And I actually am not sure how you would do it without planning ahead.
Really, and I think that that is probably the answer to why a lot of people have trouble sticking to those kinds of things. But
Right.
if you can get on board with, this is what I can have, this is what I have on hand, you're not getting hangry, you're not choosing other things. And then that starts your habit or your diet change, or maybe you just got diagnosed with the, hey, you don't need to eat this anymore.
Yeah.
If you, whatever that is, if you can start on the right foot, of I've got the snacks, I've got the meals, that is a huge stress reliever. And
Right.
taking out stress helps you reach your goals.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. All right. Well, I think we can wrap up today's episode. Next week, we are going to be back talking about a 2022 recap with Plan to Eat. And we hope you guys will join us for that. But Riley, why don't you talk about a recipe that you had recently that you loved?
So I recently got this air fryer, and I think that I know I'm so late to the game with the air fryer, but I get the hype. It is impressive how fast things cook inside of it and how good they are. I made some like teriyaki chicken skewers. And so while those were cooking for like 13 minutes or something in the air fryer, I did the like teriyaki noodles and veggies and sauteed that all up and then just put the chicken in it. It made the meal so fast.
That's
And it was
awesome.
really
And
juicy and it was delicious. Yeah, it was great.
was the chicken like crispy then, like crunchy, or how does it come out? Because I don't have an air fryer yet.
Right, right,
So
right.
how does it come out when it comes out?
So this chicken wasn't breaded. So it didn't
Okay.
have any kind of like crunch on it. But it came out with that kind of like nice, like a little bit of crisp, like a little bit of like well cooked outside that I kind of like, and the inside was really tender and juicy.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. I mean, I think one of the things about it is it's just hands off. You put it in there,
Yeah.
you set it, and it just does its thing, which is pretty impressive. I've been really impressed with it. So I get the hype. What about you, Ronnie? What's something you've eaten recently?
Well, the recipe that I'm going to talk about is one that I saved from your Plan to Eat account. And when I told you about it, you told me that your brother was the one who introduced you to that recipe. So, Brian, if you're listening, shout out to you for this amazing recipe. It's called NYC Halal Cart Chicken and Rice. And it's a really simple recipe. It's just, I use chicken thighs. I don't remember if the recipe called for thick chicken thighs or breasts, but I had thighs. And you marinate them in like a really yummy, like halal spice marinade that has Greek yogurt in it and something else, maybe lemon juice. I don't remember what the acid is that's in the marinade. But so I actually went through the process of marinating it overnight, which is sometimes doesn't always happen. But that really elevated the chicken. Like that made the chicken so flavorful and tasty. And then you make rice, but you make the rice with like spices and stuff in the rice. So while the rice is cooking, it like absorbs all those flavors. And I really need to do that more often because it made the rice so flavorful and delicious. It was a really simple recipe. It's now like on repeat on my meal plan because it's so good. And my husband was very impressed by it. So always love that. So that's going to be in the Planty podcast account and everybody should go and try it.
Yeah, that's a great one. When you text me about it, I was like, oh man, that is so good. And, honestly, forgetting about really great recipes is one of my toxic traits or something. I don't know. But I started a folder in my recipe book that is, well, it's a course. I renamed a course favorites or like recipes we love. Recipes we love is what it's called. And I'll just add them into there. And it's a conglomeration of desserts and appetizers and breakfast and dinner, but then they're all in one spot. You could also use tags for that, but I had forgotten about that recipe. So it's on my meal plan also. I can't wait to try it again because it is really good.
Yum. Okay. Well, thank you guys for listening to another episode. You can find all the recipes that we talked about. You can find the recipes talked about today and any other recipes at planteat.com/PTEPOD. That'll take you to a landing page where you can connect with our podcast account in Plan to Eat and find all the yummy recipes we talk about. And, subscribe to our podcast.